I didn't go back to that house for a long time. Not the next day, not the next week, not even when the messages slowly started to change. At first, they were small and almost harmless. A photo of my coffee cup on the counter, a short clip of the hallway light turning off by itself, a quiet recording of someone breathing too close to the microphone. Nothing dramatic, just enough to remind me that someone was still inside my life, even when I wasn't there to notice it. One evening, while I was standing in the kitchen, my phone vibrated again. I looked down and saw a photo of myself, standing exactly where I was, taken from behind. Same shirt, same posture, the same cold light from the refrigerator spilling across the floor. I didn't turn around. I didn't check the room. I just walked out of the house and kept walking until my legs were tired and my thoughts were empty. The next morning, the messages stopped. That silence felt heavier than anything I had received before, and I realized I was more afraid of nothing happening than of something being wrong. That was when I decided to go back, not to my house, but to the place where all of this seemed to begin. The childhood home I had avoided for years. In daylight, it looked smaller, almost harmless, like a place that had already finished telling its story. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old paper. The candles were gone, the photos were gone, and the rooms felt hollow, as if something important had already left. The quiet there was different from the quiet in my own house. It didn't feel empty. It felt patient. When I reached the top of the stairs, I saw him standing in my old bedroom, looking out the window as if he had been waiting for a very long time. He looked like me, but not exactly. His face was softer, his expression calmer, as if he had learned how to live with disappointment instead of avoiding it. He told me he was the version of me who stayed, not in that house, but in that life. The version that didn't walk away when things became difficult or uncomfortable, that didn't confuse stability with happiness, and that didn't treat silence as a sign that something was finished. He hadn't taken anything from me, he said. He had only lived what I had quietly left behind. The moments I had chosen not to step into became the moments he was built from. And now he was fading, not because he was dying, but because he was becoming unnecessary. Emily had stopped visiting. The connection between our lives was weakening. Soon there would be nothing left to hold him in place. Before I left, he asked me if I would trade places with him if I could. I didn't answer because I didn't trust myself, to be honest. That night I slept in my own bed again next to my wife, and for the first time in weeks my phone stayed quiet. No messages, no photos, no reminders. But when I woke up before dawn, I felt a strange kind of homesickness for a life I had never lived. And I understood that even if he disappeared, he would never really be gone, because he was made out of my choices, and I was still making them. And yet, even as I told myself that, I knew something had changed. The house felt the same, the routine was the same, and Emily was the same but alone. I moved through my days more slowly, as if I were waiting for something without knowing what it was. Sometimes I caught myself listening for things that weren't there anymore. The vibration of my phone, the sound of a door opening when I was sure it was locked, the faint sense that someone was standing just behind me. None of it ever came back, but the expectation stayed, like an echo that didn't fade. Emily asked me once if something was wrong. I told her no, and that was almost true. Nothing was wrong in the way people usually mean it. There was no crisis, no argument, no loss I could point to. There was only the feeling that I had seen something I wasn't supposed to see and that it had quietly changed the shape of my life. I began to understand that regret doesn't always arrive as pain. Sometimes it arrives as clarity, as a sudden awareness of all the versions of yourself you never became, all the choices that were never taken, all the words that were never spoken. You don't miss them because they're gone. You miss them because you can finally see them. There were nights when I dreamed about that house again, not as it was, but as it might have been. Warm, lived in, full of the kind of quiet that feels chosen, not empty. In those dreams, I wasn't watching from the outside. I was inside, sitting at a table, listening to a voice that felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. When I woke up, the feeling stayed with me longer than the images did. A sense of connection to something that wasn't part of my present, but felt deeply tied to who I was. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't happiness. It was something closer to recognition. I realized then that maybe the other version of me hadn't been a warning, or a threat, or even a mystery. Maybe he had simply been a mirror, showing me what it looks like when a life is shaped by staying instead of leaving, by choosing instead of drifting, by speaking instead of staying silent. And maybe the reason he had faded wasn't because he was weak or unreal, but because I no longer needed him to exist somewhere else, because I had finally seen him. And in seeing him, I had learned something about myself. Not what I had lost, but what I still had time to become.